Greetings, Grim Historians. Welcome to another dive into the murky depths of history, where the line between fairy tale and tragedy blurs like watercolor in a summer rain. Today, we're venturing into the Bavarian Alps, a land of breathtaking beauty and utter financial ruin, all thanks to one man, King Ludwig II. You know, the castles, right? Neuschwanstein, Hohenschwangau, those impossibly romantic structures perched atop craggy peaks, inspiring Disney animators and countless Instagram posts. But behind the breathtaking turrets and ornate carvings lies a story far more twisted and fascinating than any fairy tale. A story of obsession, extravagance, and a toilet. Yes, a toilet. Forget the usual tales of medieval kings squabbling over land and waging brutal wars. Ludwig II wasn't interested in conquering territories. His battlefield was the realm of fantasy and his weapon of choice, an almost unimaginable amount of money. Let's start with a seemingly insignificant detail. A detail so bizarre it almost overshadows the sheer scale of his madness. Imagine, if you will, a toilet. Not just any toilet, mind you. This was a toilet of such exquisite craftsmanship, such opulent design, that it cost more than some entire villages in Bavaria. We're talking about a porcelain throne inlaid with gold, adorned with precious stones, a throne fit for, well, a king who clearly had more money than sense. This single, gilded lavatory cost a fortune that would make even today's tech billionaires blush. Now, I know what you're thinking. A toilet? Really? That's the hook? But hold on to your hats, because this isn't just about a ridiculously expensive porcelain throne. This million-dollar toilet, the symbol of extravagant excess, is the perfect microcosm of Ludwig's reign. It represents a man who poured the kingdom's entire treasury into his fantastical projects, a man so consumed by his vision that he utterly disregarded the consequences. Think of it, a medieval kingdom already grappling with the usual woes of the era famine, disease, peasant uprisings, and their king is spending a king's ransom on toilets. While his people struggled, Ludwig built castles, not for defense or strategic advantage, but for pure, unadulterated aesthetic pleasure. Castles that were, in essence, living, breathing works of art, but works of art built on a foundation of debt, a foundation that would ultimately crumble under the weight of his ambitions. Picture this, a king so detached from reality that he spends more on a single toilet than on feeding his starving population. A king so lost in his own world of Wagnerian operas and romantic ideals that he ignores the cries of a nation teetering on the brink of collapse. Is this the story of a madman? Or is there something more sinister at play? Something beyond the glittering facades of his fairy tale castles? The truth, as always, is far more complex than it initially appears. The story of Ludwig II is not merely a tale of extravagant spending. It's a cautionary tale about unchecked power, the intoxicating allure of fantasy, and the tragic consequences of ignoring the harsh realities of the world. Let's rewind the clock, back to a time of powdered wigs, elaborate courtly dances, and a burgeoning romantic movement that would sweep Europe into a frenzy of emotion and artistic expression. We're talking 19th century Bavaria, a land of rolling hills and ancient forests, a kingdom ripe for a fairy tale, and a king obsessed with creating one. Our protagonist, King Ludwig II, wasn't your typical medieval monarch. He wasn't a hardened warrior, nor a shrewd political player maneuvering for power in a bloody game of thrones. Oh no, Ludwig was something far more. Peculiar, he was a dreamer, a romantic, an artist king trapped in the gilded cage of a demanding throne. Imagine a young boy, raised in the shadow of the Bavarian court, steeped in the legends of chivalry, knights errant, and mythical creatures. That boy Ludwig devoured tales of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, his imagination ignited by the soaring romanticism of the era. This wasn't the harsh, brutal world of medieval warfare and plagues. This was a world of idealized romance, a world he yearned to inhabit. And then he discovered Richard Wagner. The name itself conjures images of operatic grandeur, mythical sagas, and soaring orchestral scores. Wagner, the controversial composer, became more than just a musician to Ludwig. He became a mentor, a confidant, a kindred spirit who understood the depth of his romantic soul. Their relationship, a complex entanglement of artistic collaboration and personal devotion, profoundly shaped the king's vision for Bavaria. Wagner's operas, with their themes of heroism, sacrifice, and the power of untamed nature, resonated deeply with Ludwig's own inner world. The mythical landscapes, the valiant knights, the tragic heroines, they all fueled his dreams of a kingdom transformed into a living embodiment of romantic idealism. But Ludwig's vision wasn't just about music. It was a complete sensory experience, a visual feast for the eyes. He envisioned castles that weren't mere fortifications. They were works of art, breathtaking expressions of his creative genius. Castles that would rise from the Bavarian landscape like fantastical creations from the pages of a fairy tale. Think of Neuschwanstein Castle, perched high on a rugged cliff. Its turrets piercing the sky, a breathtaking spectacle of neo-Gothic architecture. Imagine Hohenschwangau, its romantic towers overlooking the serene waters of the Alpsee, evoking a sense of otherworldly beauty. These weren't functional fortresses designed for defense. They were theatrical sets, extravagant backdrops for Ludwig's private world, a stage on which he could play out his romantic fantasies. The swans, a recurring motif in Ludwig's life and art, symbolize purity, grace, and a connection to nature. He saw them as ethereal creatures, embodying the beauty and untamed spirit that he sought to capture in his architecture and his life. These weren't simply symbols. They were a manifestation of his deeply sensitive and intensely romantic soul. He surrounded himself with symbols of a romanticized medieval past, a past far removed from the realities of 19th century politics and the increasing pressure to modernize his kingdom. This retreat into a world of fantasy, however, would have unforeseen and ultimately tragic consequences. His obsession, while beautiful and inspiring, would lead to a path of financial ruin and ultimately his mysterious demise. Let's talk about money, or rather the lack of it. Because while King Ludwig II's castles are breathtaking testaments to Romantic-era extravagance, their construction was a financial black hole that swallowed Bavaria whole. Think of it like this. He was the Elon Musk of his time, except instead of colonizing Mars, he was colonizing the Bavarian Alps with impossibly ornate palaces. And just like Musk's ventures, it came at a steep, kingdom-crippling price. We've seen the dazzling beauty of Neuschwanstein, Hohenschwangau, and Linderhof. But behind the shimmering spires and breathtaking frescoes lurked a grim reality, crippling debt. Ludwig, bless his aesthetically challenged heart, cared little for the practicalities of governance. His reign was less about ruling a kingdom and more about indulging a boundless artistic vision. He was utterly consumed by his projects, pouring vast sums of money into them, completely oblivious or perhaps willfully ignoring the mounting financial crisis. Imagine the medieval equivalent of a modern-day budget meeting. Except instead of spreadsheets, they'd be using quill pens and parchment, meticulously tracking the dwindling gold reserves. The advisors, likely sweating profusely under the weight of the king's whims, would have presented him with increasingly desperate pleas. "Your Majesty," they might have stammered, "the treasury is empty." Ludwig, probably lost in a daydream about swans and Wagnerian operas, would have waved them away with a dismissive gesture. "More gold! The grotto needs more shimmering mosaics." And so the building continued. Each exquisitely detailed carving, each breathtaking fresco, each meticulously crafted piece of furniture represented a further erosion of Bavaria's already strained finances. We're not talking about minor overspending here. This was a systematic dismantling of the kingdom's economic stability. It wasn't just the initial construction costs. It was the constant upkeep, the extravagant furnishings, the endless stream of artists and artisans summoned from across Europe. Think of the logistical nightmare alone, transporting materials across treacherous mountain passes, employing thousands of workers, all while maintaining a level of opulence that bordered on the absurd. The situation mirrored the financial woes of many medieval monarchs who engaged in ambitious building projects. Remember the magnificent cathedrals that dominated the European skyline? Their construction often stretched for decades, consuming enormous resources and sometimes pushing entire dioceses into debt. Ludwig's castles were a similar scale of ambition. But without the religious justification or the long-term economic benefit, these weren't defensive structures. They were pure, unadulterated expressions of a king's fantastical dreams. The irony is palpable. While Ludwig's predecessors had built castles for strategic reasons, defense, power projection, his served no such purpose. They were essentially giant, gilded expressions of his personal aesthetic sensibilities. This wasn't simply lavish spending. It was a complete disregard for the realities of governing a kingdom. He was a king adrift in a sea of his own imagination, utterly oblivious to the economic shipwreck he was creating. The cost of his dream was being borne by his people, a populace already burdened by the usual medieval hardships of famine, disease, and taxation. The Bavarian treasury, once a symbol of prosperity, became a depleted husk, mirroring the empty coffers of countless medieval kingdoms brought low by war, famine, or the unchecked ambition of their rulers. The difference? Ludwig's downfall wasn't caused by external forces, but by an internal obsession. A passionate pursuit of a fairy tale that ultimately cost him his kingdom. And that, my friends, is a story far more tragic than any dark fairy tale. The opulent castles shimmered, ghostly white against the Bavarian Alps, monuments to a king's extravagant vision, but the fairy tale was crumbling. The whispers started subtly, like the rustling of silk in a shadowed corridor, murmurs of extravagance, of a king detached from reality. Ludwig II, the builder of dreams, was increasingly seen as a liability, a monarch whose fantastical projects threatened to bankrupt the kingdom. This wasn't some peasant uprising fueled by hunger or religious fervor. This was a calculated dismantling of a throne, a coup d'etat cloaked in concern for the Bavarian state. We know the official story. A medical commission, hastily assembled, declared King Ludwig insane. A swift, almost surgical, removal from power. The parallels to medieval power plays are chillingly familiar. Remember the deposition of Richard II, the Wars of the Roses, the countless times ambitious nobles used accusations of madness or heresy to seize power? Ludwig's case followed a disturbingly similar pattern. The irony is bitter. Ludwig, a man who retreated into the world of Wagnerian opera and medieval romance, became the victim of a very real, very brutal medieval power struggle. His isolation, his unwavering devotion to his artistic vision, were interpreted as signs of madness by a government increasingly concerned with its own survival. His obsession with the past blinded him to the present, a present where his kingdom was teetering on the edge of financial ruin. He saw himself as a patron of the arts, a modern-day Maecenas, but his advisors saw a reckless spender, a king more interested in swans and castles than the welfare of his people. But was he truly mad? Or was this a convenient diagnosis, a tool used to justify a pre-planned seizure of power? The evidence is murky, shrouded in the fog of Bavarian politics. The official account paints a picture of a king increasingly detached from reality, consumed by his grandiose visions. Yet many historians suggest that the diagnosis was politically motivated, a convenient way to remove a king who had become increasingly unpopular with the elite. Consider the timing. The kingdom was facing financial difficulties, but the situation wasn't insurmountable. A more measured approach, perhaps financial reforms, might have saved the monarchy. Instead, the swift action suggests a premeditated plan, a carefully orchestrated removal of a king who had become a burden, a threat to the established order. The whispers of treason, of secret meetings and clandestine alliances are hard to ignore. It's a classic medieval scenario, ambitious nobles maneuvering for power, using any means necessary to secure their own positions. The night of his deposition was shrouded in secrecy. A doctor, a government official, and a handful of guards. No trial, no public announcement, just a quiet, almost furtive removal of a king from his throne. The echoes of medieval usurpations resonate through the historical record. The swiftness, the lack of due process, it all screams of a pre-planned maneuver, a carefully crafted conspiracy to silence a dissenting voice. And then, the death. Found drowned in shallow water alongside his psychiatrist, the official explanation is suicide. But the circumstances remain suspicious, fueling conspiracy theories to this day. Was it suicide, an accident, or something more sinister? A carefully arranged accident, perhaps? The absence of a clear explanation only adds to the mystery, leaving a lingering sense of unease, a haunting question mark hanging over the fate of the fairy tale king. The whispers persist, echoing through the halls of his magnificent castles, a testament to the enduring power of intrigue and the enduring mysteries of the past. So the fairy tale ends, but what remains? A king, deemed mad, lies dead at the bottom of a lake, a mystery clinging to him like the algae on the stones of his beloved castles. But the story of Ludwig II isn't just about a tragic end. It's about the enduring power and the devastating consequences of a dream. Let's examine the grim aftermath of this Bavarian king's obsession. We're used to thinking of fairy tale castles as charming, whimsical places. But Neuschwanstein, Hohenschwangau, Linderhof, they weren't just built on dreams, they were built on debt. Mountains of it. The staggering cost of Ludwig's architectural fantasies wasn't just a matter of extravagant spending. It was a direct reflection of the precarious financial state of even the most powerful medieval-esque kingdoms. Think of the vast sums spent on constructing cathedrals in the High Middle Ages, impressive feats of engineering, but often funded by heavy taxation and sometimes outright exploitation. Ludwig's castles, in their breathtaking scale and opulent detail, echoed this medieval extravagance, but with a modern twist, a modern banking system that couldn't keep pace with his boundless vision. The Bavarian treasury was bled dry. The kingdom, already facing economic pressures, teetered on the brink of collapse. The echoes of this financial crisis resonate far beyond Bavaria. Imagine the countless medieval kingdoms that crumbled under the weight of similar ambitious projects, castles, cathedrals, or even disastrous military campaigns. Ludwig's story, in a strange way, offers a poignant parallel to the economic fragility of those earlier eras. His castles stand as testaments not only to his romantic vision but also to the limitations of even a king's power when confronted with the harsh realities of finance. His legacy, however, is far from simple. While his financial mismanagement led to widespread criticism and ultimately his downfall, the sheer beauty of his creations cannot be denied. Tourists flock to his castles, drawn in by the very romanticism that bankrupted his kingdom. They are living testaments to his singular vision, a vision so powerful it transcends the grim reality of its creation. But they also serve as a stark reminder. A reminder that even the most breathtaking dreams can come at an unbearable cost. A reminder that the allure of romance, however captivating, can blind us to the consequences of unchecked ambition. Neuschwanstein, Hohenschwangau, Linderhof, these aren't just castles. They are cautionary tales. They are gilded cages, beautiful but ultimately unsustainable, echoing the fragility of power and the devastating cost of obsession. Ludwig's story isn't just a medieval drama. It's a timeless tragedy. A tragic operatic masterpiece, if you will, complete with soaring highs and a devastatingly low final act. He was, in a way, a tragic hero, a victim of his own magnificent, self-destructive fantasies. His story whispers a warning across the centuries. The price of a fairy tale can be far higher than anyone imagines. And so, the Mad King remains a figure of fascination, a paradox of genius and folly. His castles, magnificent monuments to a shattered dream, stand as a testament to the enduring power of human imagination and the equally enduring power of financial ruin. His story continues to resonate, reminding us that even in the most fantastical of realms, reality always has the last word. So there you have it. The tale of King Ludwig II, the Elon Musk of the 19th century, a man who traded the stability of his kingdom for the fleeting beauty of his dreams. He built castles that whispered of Wagnerian operas and mythical swans, monuments to a romanticized past that ultimately swallowed him whole. His extravagance, a dazzling display of artistic vision, bankrupted Bavaria, leaving behind a legacy as complex and contradictory as the man himself. Was he truly mad, a victim of his own imagination, as the official narrative suggests? Or was he a pawn in a political game, a king whose vision threatened the established order? A victim of a conspiracy orchestrated by those who feared his power and his unwavering devotion to his artistic ideals? The circumstances surrounding his death remain shrouded in mystery, a chilling echo of the medieval intrigues that played out in castles not unlike his own. The unanswered questions surrounding his demise, The whispers of foul play, the convenient timing of his insanity diagnosis, these elements combine to create a narrative as captivating as any fairy tale, yet far more disturbing. The shimmering beauty of Neuschwanstein and Linderhof castles stands in stark contrast to the grim reality of a kingdom brought to its knees, a king dethroned, and a death shrouded in doubt. His story is a haunting reminder that even the most breathtaking dreams can come at a devastating cost. A cautionary tale whispered through the echoing halls of his magnificent, yet tragically empty, castles. It's a story of ambition, artistry, and the perilous line between genius and madness. And the question remains, was Ludwig II a visionary ahead of his time, or a tragic figure whose grand vision ultimately led to his downfall? What do you think? Was Ludwig mad, or was he a victim of circumstance? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Grim Histories for more tales from the dark side of history. We'll see you in the next video.